So this video is more to explain micro-efficient concepts relating to the Runespan that players going for 120 or 200 mil should really start to consider, especially since you're going to be spending upwards of 2,500 hours in this place. And it's really the small things in Runespan that make the biggest difference. So the three concepts I'm going to cover in this video, I guess, is nodes, positioning, and movement. And this kind of encompasses basically how you should be making decisions within Runespan and what kind of things you should be keeping in the back of your mind when training. And Runespan's pretty AFK. It's generally considered a very easy training method, but at the same time, a lot of the players that come in make so many mistakes that this 80,000 experience hour quickly drops to 70,000, which quickly drops to 60,000, which quickly drops to 50,000. And so it's not something that you can really relax with, and although it's AFK, it's really a click and wait skill. There's a lot of observation and constant attention, or at least side attention, that needs to be paid to your account. So let's talk about nodes. I did some testing a few months ago, and as you can see from this table, I found this node order: Fleshy Growth, then Firestorm, then Vine, then Fireball, and the Rock Fragment, and then the Water Pool. And I didn't include the last two, but you should prioritize Mindstorm and then Cyclone. So this is based on an ideal kind of test situation. I did a number of siphons, and then I recorded the successes and the fails. And in the case of the Vine and the Firestorm, I recorded a high success and a low success because, for example, a Firestorm has a low success of 23 experience and a high success of 46 experience. And so that gave me an average XP per hour in this ideal condition of having, say, unlimited rune essence and the node never despawns. So you can see the Fleshy Growth is the highest with about 93,000 XP per hour. So this gives you an idea of what nodes you should be siphoning when they're available and when they're spawned. There's a few intricacies with the method itself. Clearly you want to be grabbing essence from the floating stacks and then immediately clicking back to the node. You never want to get the message in your chat box that says you've run out of essence, grab more from a floating stack or something like that. So you want to be always keeping an eye on your essence stack and making sure that when it hits 1, you're ready to grab some more from the stack. In addition, when you're switching nodes, you always want to do it after an XP drop occurs, so every 2 ticks. So you can switch losslessly between nodes. A lot of people don't do this or don't see it as a big thing, but it is 1 tick saved, so there's not really any reason not to. And finally, when switching to a new node, you don't want to be grabbing essence in between. So for example, if you're siphoning a Firestorm and a Fleshy pops up right next to you, you don't have to move to switch to the Fleshy. Not only should you wait until an XP drop to click on the Fleshy, you should also not grab essence before switching to the Fleshy. This is just a waste of time, and there's no reason to waste those ticks, the 4 or 5 ticks it takes to grab more essence, especially if you're not out. So it's kind of a habit that I've had in the past, and I think I do it in my 1-hour video, but it's something you should try to avoid. So let's talk positioning. We can start by looking at this map of the second floor of Runespan, and I've highlighted in green all the pathways in the islands that are available to pure free-to-play players, and in red, of course, are the islands we cannot get to. And so it's been generally accepted for a while that you want to be staying on the Doughnut Island. This is the one that has a little donut hole in the middle, and generally is considered pretty circular, hence the name Doughnut. And this is the one you'll see me use in both of my Runespan videos, and probably any players that are going for 120 or 200 mil are going to be staying on this island. It's not necessarily confirmed that it's the best in terms of spawn and in terms of node positioning, but compared to Main Island, let's say, the one you originally come to when climbing up the Vine ladder, it is definitely better. I have done those XP rate tests, and in general, more nodes spawn on Doughnut, and there's less need to be siphoning creatures. To effectively do Runespan, you're going to need an interface and a game client window large enough so that you can see the entirety of Doughnut Island. Whether this means moving a bunch of your interface clutter down to the bottom or readjusting your game world under edit mode, you need to make sure that you can see a couple different spots depending on where you are on the island. Particularly based on this map, you want to watch out for this spot. This is hidden a lot by the floating rocks. In addition, this spot. And when you're on the west side, you need to be careful for this spot. So you'll have to position your camera appropriately depending on where you're siphoning and what side of the island you're on. You can see a few examples of that in my videos. I try to do it as good as I can, but I'm also playing in a much smaller interface when I'm recording, so it's not an accurate representation of what my interface is actually like. So this is the most difficult aspect of the Runespan in my opinion, and that is, how do you position yourself on the island with regards specifically to the floating essences? It's important that you want to be close to one as much as possible, preferably within one square, although it's not always possible depending on a node placement. So this is a good example of that. A vine spawned on the north side of the island, and as you can see that there's no essence stacks right where I am. I've got to either choose between the east side or the west side, and I choose the west side for the reason that I know that the vine is going to despawn soon because it was up for a while I was siphoning a firestorm before, and I know that the rock fragments over there that are being siphoned by someone else are likely going to be my next node. And so I'm going to minimize the time that it takes me to move to my next node, thinking maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead, by staying on the west side and just sacrificing the extra time it takes me to run to the essence stack and back to the spot where I can siphon the vine from. Because I know that when it finally dies, which it does here in a second, I'll be on the correct spot to move to the rock fragment and continue siphoning, which in general will save me more ticks overall. So as you can see, I go back, I click on the vine, it dies, and I'm already on the west side, so I immediately can go and start siphoning the rock fragment. It dies, so I move to the next rock fragment, and now I'm positioned pretty well for the next spawn. This is another good example of positioning. I'm siphoning a firestorm, and a newer firestorm spawns on the other side, the east side of the island. A lot of people I see that don't really know what they're doing at Runespan would run to that firestorm, and that's really not a good idea. Kind of a concept you want to keep in mind when siphoning is that you're better safe than sorry, and so there's really no reason to waste the ticks running to that other firestorm when there's still a possibility that a better node or an equal node could spawn nearer to you. And so I just continue siphoning the firestorm. There's no reason for me to move at this point, but if it dies, of course, I will go to the next firestorm. You can generally expect a node to die after about 50 siphons, which is 2 inventories, and so you can see I get pretty lucky in that a firestorm spawned on a side of the island that is closer to me, which in general is going to save me ticks running to the next node. So it really paid off, maybe not in a huge way, but it still saved ticks for me to wait out the firestorm I was on, and hope for a better node spawn or an equal node spawn that saves me more time. So this brings us to our third topic, which is movement and awareness. In general, you want to keep an internal timer of each node that's been spawned in the Runespan. It's really not that difficult once you've been doing it for a while, and if you're a RuneScape player, I'm sure that you've done it with other things like timing potions or making sure that your prayer stays up. It's pretty natural. So you want to basically have a die time in mind and a spawn time in mind for each node. So like in this scenario, I know that the fleshy growth is the second most recent spawn, and I know that the firestorm that the other guy there is siphoning is the oldest, and the firestorm that is nearer to me is the newest, and then a new firestorm has just spawned on the steps, that's now the newest. And so it goes like this, kind of creating a stack in your mind of the different spawn times and which one's going to die. And so this can really help you decide how you should be moving across the island. Let's imagine a scenario in which I'm siphoning a fleshy growth and it had spawned exactly the same tick as a firestorm that had spawned across the island. So after about 50 essence of siphoning the fleshy growth, it dies, but the firestorm is still alive. But I see that there's also a fireball next to the original fleshy growth I was already siphoning. And so now, based on my internal clock, I know that for one, the XP per hour difference between a firestorm and a fireball is not that much, and two, the firestorm is likely to die soon, even sometimes mid-run, so maybe it's not worth the ticks running to the other side of the island just for a minimal XP per hour increase. So I'll probably stay on my side, and I'll siphon the fireball, and I'll hope that the firestorm dies soon so that my decision was correct. It's worth noting that spawns operate on a FIFO order, which is first in, first out, so the first one to spawn is usually the first one to die. It's unconfirmed whether having more than one person siphon a node extends its life, or whether having a person siphon it at all extends its life. I doubt we'll ever get data or a reply from JMod that looks at the code. So yeah. I think I've covered most of the concepts that are common in the Runespan, and some things that most casual players wouldn't really stop to consider. There are a few other tips I have. In general, you want to try doing Runespan with a partner. I'm always in World 20 with Desper, and it really helps movement-wise to have two people detecting new node spawns, or whether we should move to another side of the island or something like that. So for example, if he spots a fleshy growth that I didn't see because it was blocked behind some of this floating crap, he moves, his character moves, and that catches my eye so that I know I should move as well. It can also help in the case where there's no nodes at all and we're siphoning creatures to stack up some essence so that we can AFK while we play our other accounts and maybe pay a bit less attention in regards to clicking on the floating piles and grabbing essence. And having two people gang banging one creature can be fairly helpful. It's not cumulative, it's the first person that gets to 5 successful siphons, but it seems to come a bit quicker when there's two people on it. Another tip I'd have is to pay attention to chips, and you can right click every creature and select chip off, which will detract from some of your runes, but it'll reward you with rune essence. I'm not sure about the timers on this, I don't do it fairly often, but you can chip off from each creature every once in a while to get a boost to your essence stack and help you AFK a bit more. You can also abuse other people for essence. Here's a hardcore Iron Man that's about to start siphoning this air Essling. And so what I do is I count the number of successful siphons, and so you can see this orb by his hands, and every time it stays in, that's a successful siphon, and every time it jumps up, that's an unsuccessful siphon. So what I do is I grab 25 essence, I chip, and I quickly tag the air Essling before it dies, which rewards me with a stack of 75 essence, which boosts it to 80 or 90, I mean. So that's a really nice way to kind of abuse your fellow players. And something that we joke a lot about in EHPCC, but is actually kind of helpful, is turning on your game sounds and listening for the siphon sound to stop. If you're AFKing, playing another account, watching a movie, doing whatever, this can be a great way to know that you need to come back, you need to grab more essence, or you need to change nodes. Don't go crazy listening to those sounds. It's tough. And the very final thing I should talk about is the new Runespan reward shop and the accompanying unstable essence. Free-to-players should be using this at the body altar. You can get to it by using your Skull Scepter teleport, or it's a little bit south and west of Edgeville. So I show it in the video, and I get about 900 spam points per hour, 800, around there depending on your efficiency. So if you're going for 200 mil, you want to be doing Runespan until about 186 million experience. As you can see on this image up on screen, you want to store about 6.2 million bonus XP, and then spend all your span points at the end for 833k unstable essence, and then use it on bonus XP in 14 hours for a total gain of 13.665 mil XP. I'm really looking forward to this actually. I'm going to stock it up on the way to 200 mil, and then blow it out on bonus XP weekend. It's going to be pretty fun. And the EHP rate for runecrafting is changing accordingly. It does not assume that you're going to be using it on bonus, neither does the video I released recently, the 1 hour video. But the new rate for Runespan will be 77,500 XP per hour. I think that about covers it. This video probably isn't coherent. It's about 1 a.m. and I'm kind of rambling about Runespan, but I hope it helps anyone going for 120 or 200 mil or wants to know a little bit more about the Runespan, and maybe it's not as simple or AFK and easy as you may think. To do it well, that is. Of course, anybody can AFK for shit rates, as with anything in this game. But yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you for listening, and take care.